This is Ron Klopfenstein, and you're in the hot seat on a Media Monday. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody, and welcome to the show. Today, we'll have some comedy from Rob Fish, but my first guest today is William Welch. He's the author of Adding Saffron, a semi-autobiographical book of poetry. He's also the publisher of Doubly Mad, an independent journal of arts and ideas, which is published by The Other Side in Utica. William, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me here, Ron. It's good to talk with you.
I'm so glad you're here. So tell me about this book. Adding Saffron is described as a semi-autobiographical book of poems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a collection that I put together from work that I'd written over the past 5 or 6 years. It sort of tracks the development of my life over the past 10 years, really. And I've always been sort of trapped in my own mind in a certain way, and it's partly about how I'm learning to observe the world around me in more detail. And it also sort of tracks my journey as I'm going around the country and searching for a home, in a sense. I'm from this area, but I had left for a span of 5 or so years. I was in Brooklyn, New York for 3, and then I was in Houston, Texas for about 2. So it kind of deals with that. It's loosely following that trajectory.
What were you looking for in that time when you went to those places and tried living in other areas, which is a great thing to do, Mm-hmm. What kind of things were you looking for?
I'm just looking at America. That's kind of what it is.
What did you see?
Oh gosh, you meet all different people. It's an eye-opening experience. But you can have that experience anywhere where you are. It doesn't have to be a matter of traveling or leaving home. You learn as you observe your environment and a more minute detail. You can come to have more empathy with the people that you're encountering. If you close yourself off, you don't have that capacity, I don't think.
Right. Well, who are some of the people that you met when you traveled, or what are some of the lessons that you learned from those experiences?
For a while I worked construction in Houston, and I met all sorts of people, who were from all over Central America, but people who'd grown up in Houston, and when we were in New York, I worked different jobs. I on the sidewalk trying to get people to sign up for green electricity, and then I worked for Elizabeth Weatherford. She was the curator of the film department at the National Museum of the American Indian.
Interesting.
So I just
so you had a lot of
interesting
interesting experiences in your life.
Right. Yeah. So and it all just turned into a snowball journey, and then turned into a book of poems.
So you feel like during the time you're experiencing this and living your life, you've tried as an artist, as a person, you're trying to become more observant and more responsive to your. Right. This is an interesting thing to say, because I think I'm very much in my own head, and I think it's extremely hard to, especially I think it's hard to sort of attach emotionally to other stuff that's going on, and I think it must be, as a poet, it must be particularly difficult. It must be a challenge for you to find out as a poet, you must have to drill into the deepest, truest emotion of the story, I would imagine.
I try to. It depends. Each poem takes on its own life, really, as I'm writing it. Sometimes it's just, it takes me years to write a poem, and sometimes it comes through in a few moments. It'd be nice if that happened all the time. It doesn't.
Right.
My friend Tom Townsley, who's also a poet, he says it's like dialing in the radio stations. You're trying to get the signal clear, and some days it's clear as a bell, and some days you're just getting static.
Some days you get some static too. Yeah. Would you like to read us the poem?
Oh, sure, yeah.
So before you do, maybe tell us what the poem is, and maybe talk to us about how does this poem kind of reflect your journey in becoming someone who's more present and more a part of the world around you.
Okay. Well, gee, I'll try.
That was your themes.
Those are my themes. Yeah. I know. It's hard. Well, I will say
my questions are always so hard.
So
there's never one that throws you, because I meet people and I'm very upbeat and shallow. Then I get here and I'm thinking, all of a sudden I have these deep philosophical questions.
No, it's great. I'll be honest with you. It's hard. It really is hard to. When my publisher is saying, "Well, how would you describe your book?" It's really hard to it's really hard to boil it down. Poems don't really. It's hard. If a poem is really good, you can't really paraphrase it.
Right,
It is its own thing. But I'll read the title poem.
Because in a way,
a
poem kind of is paraphrased.
Right. So I'll read the title poem of the book, and maybe we can tease some answers
I like
out
it.
of that.
Go ahead.
Right? So this is Adding Saffron. March brings its rain and stubborn questions. The red-winged blackbirds return. I walk through the half-thawing marsh, listening to their familiar Oakley call. Every time the blackbird sings, he shrugs his shoulders. I don't know either, I tell him. Sometimes I think the soul is two-toned, like an old board. The half that's been baked by sunlight is dark brown, the color of cinnamon or burnt toast, while the other half that was covered with a stone or sheet of plywood is light yellow, as though the tree has just been cut. Then Blackbird interrupts. Isn't this a little extravagant, adding the soul to every problem? Isn't it excessive, like including saffron threads in a dessert? Yes, I answer, excessive, unnecessary, even if it does impart that pretty yellow you can't manage with other dyes and subtle flavor, easy to miss, like the soul when you consider all the ingredients for life, many of which are strong flavored, like garlic or molasses. But aren't we getting our metaphors mixed up a little? We don't eat number 2 pine. We aren't beavers. Shouldn't we choose? Is the soul a spice or an element of architecture? Things should be squared and orderly. Blackbird has no response for this. He shrugs and flashes that red stripe as though it answers every question. Some presence and a clump of cattails summons him away. I ought to keep myself focused on what's necessary, on how to solve the problem asked by the doctor's scalpel when it cut my mother's womb open and left that funny smile on her belly that I always think of when I see an old tree in the woods scarred by a line of barbed wire its bark grew to include. The fence is gone, but little tines of steel show through. I've been living ever since with an impression that whatever rules I was supposed to live by are already broken. But I never can make up my mind. I go back and forth from an extreme of darkness to an extreme of light. Maybe I lack a counterbrace. Maybe the ground isn't level. But I always end up adding saffron, blaming the soul, because it is sweet on my tongue and bitter in my stomach, because it won't let me be one thing, white or dark, excessive or shy. It makes me try for both.
Wow, that was really good. Yeah,
Thank you.
Powerful imagery. The cesarean scar.
Yeah,
you know. So the blackbird in the poem is kind of like you.
It's kind of like the antagonist,
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
But like what you're kind of aiming for in your life to be more appreciative of like the,
right.
So.
And also, as you're observing these things around you in the world, obviously, there you can go through the whole pathetic fallacy and think, okay, well, this is a reflection of me. Well, it isn't. But at the same time, you can incorporate that into what is going on to you, and you can help you understand what you're experiencing in your life.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, it's a sort of psychological process.
Right. And like saffron itself is a spice, a particularly expensive one.
Yeah, so it's grown from a crocus, which actually doesn't bloom in the spring. It blooms in the fall.
Wait, crocus too?
The saffron.
Now mine.
No, the saffron crocus blooms in the fall.
Really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
And it's the most of it is grown in Spain, I believe. So it comes up in I believe in September. My wife kind of.
I always saw saffron as Indian.
Yeah, well, probably because
because they use it.
When we associate so many spices with India, right?
Yeah, that's
cardamom,
true, right?
Black pepper.
Right.
So, but no, I think it was. I don't remember where it's native to. It might be native to there.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Right. So it's saffron being very rare.
Yeah.
Is like something where it's where it has particular value. I like what the blackbird is arguing kind of in the thing is not to be frivolous.
Right. Well, and it's the blackbird's kind of saying what do you do? Well, Blackbird's trying to talk sense to me, really.
Yeah, right.
What are you
right.
doing? What are you talking about the soul for? I mean,
Yeah.
aren't we really, is that really necessary? Is that really what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Well, and I'm saying, well, yeah, but there's some part of me that is split this way.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been trying to come to terms with it for
Yeah.
my entire life. And it's, in a way, probably what drove some of these journeys that I've been on.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are times when I'm an extroverted guy and I want to go out and do stuff. And then there are times when, I don't leave me alone,
Right, right.
Don't talk to me, I mean, it's just part of who I am.
What are you finding out about who you are in your writing? And as you try to become someone who's more mindful and someone who's more present, what are you finding out? And how are you changing as an artist?
I think the main thing is that I am learning not to take things for granted. I very much, as I said before, I live in my head, and a lot of the times I'm not thinking about the present, and I'm not thinking about how rich the present moment of my life is.
Yeah,
And I think this is not just something that I do. I think it's a symptom of our culture that we live in.
Yeah.
Which is why so many people are fascinated by celebrity and people don't, it's part of our consumer culture, right?
Because of the superficiality of it?
Well, yeah, because we're not really focused on what's tangible right in front of us.
Yeah, or enduring.
Or enduring, right, So I think that by writing a poem, when you sit down to write a poem, you have to create a space where you're present right there. You're not thinking about these other distractions, even if they might be worthwhile,
Yeah.
What am I going to have for dinner?
Right.
What responsibilities do I have to my family?
Right.
I mean, these are things that actually have to get out of the way for you to write a poem.
They do, but in getting them out of the way too, you're also kind of like going back into your own
Right.
head.
Right. Well, yeah.
So
but
there's
then,
kind of like
right.
a paradox.
Right. Yeah. But then once that process is over, you come back, and you hopefully I have learned something.
Yeah.
Or I've had some insight that I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that.
Do you feel as a writer, as a person too, like that for you, like your path has been more in terms of increasing your present or awareness of like what you see around you, because there's a lot of description.
There's a lot of description.
Or what emotions are being felt around you, or what you're feeling. For you, is it like both, or is it one or the other? As a poet, do you feel like you are naturally tending to emotion more than maybe other people aren't? Or is that part of this journey too?
Well, I mean, in terms of the observation, I think it goes back to the fact that my wife is a painter, and I have.
Oh, that must give you a lot of appreciation for what you see.
And
what she sees.
And what she sees, and she does a lot of landscape work, and she went to school here at Pratt and everything. That's how I met her. But from her, I really learned to see things in a different way, and I learned how to observe things in nuanced detail the way she does. She is very particular about what she sees and what fascinates her. So, for example, a plant, we'll be on a walk somewhere, and she'll see something, and just the way she allows that object to come forward to her inspired me. And inspired some of the writing of these poems. Like even in that example, I think, that poem I read, I mean, there are little things like seeing the tines of steel caught in the bark of a tree. I don't think I would ever really have noticed that quite that way before.
And it allowed you to make this really powerful connection with your own mother's abdomen, where you were taken from in this cesarean. So it's you can see like how this your greater appreciation for what you see is really given a lot of strength to your work and sharpness. So
well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean,
what are you working on now? Like what are you looking at? Like what poems specifically do you have in your head, or at least the genesis of a poem in your head?
Well, it's Lent right now, and my mentor Warren Domenico 10 years ago, I think it was, in 2015, started this thing where every day in Lent you write a poem.
I like that.
And I try to keep up with him, but I can't. He's got this gift where you can just sit down and man, there it is.
Every day that's
so,
a high bar.
Yeah, but I've been writing the past few days. I had some time over the weekend to really just sit and let that happen. And I am working on a new book. But I also, I'm always working. I work. I'm a registered nurse at my hospital.
So you're busy.
So I got some of that plays into my writing too. So some of the more recent poems are, and they're in a way they're a continuation of what some of these poems are.
Well, we're gonna hear more of your work when we come back from break. We're also gonna hear from our other guest, Rob Fish. Today I'm talking to William Welch. He's the author of Adding Saffron and the publisher of Doubly Mad, an independent journal of arts and ideas. When we come back, we'll be joined by comedian Rob Fish. You're in the hot seat on a Media Monday at 95.5 FM. I'm Ron Klopfenstein. More after the break. Klopfenstein, you're in the hot seat on Media Monday. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show and happy St. Patrick's Day. Today I'm talking to William Welch. He's the author of Adding Saffron and the publisher of Doubly Mad, an independent journal of arts and ideas. We're joined now by Rob Fish. Rob is a comedian who's been doing shows throughout the Northeast for the past 8 years. His new podcast, Small Town, we'll call it S-Head. It's not the actual title, but Small Town S-Head debuts this week. Rob, welcome to the show.
Ron, thank you so much for having me. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. So, are you Irish? Because I don't think any of us here are all that much Irish, but we're still having a good time, though.
No, but I've been celebrating like I'm Irish since about Friday, so that's kind of ready to put a bow on it for another year.
You've kind of had enough.
yeah. There's only so much corned beef and green beer you can have over the course of 3 days.
Shamrock shakes.
Yeah, exactly. Before it's just all gout and hangovers.
That's true. So, what's this podcast?
So yes, the podcast, the Small Town S-Head, as we're calling it here today. Yeah, no, it's basically just a small town guys just take on, just anything topical. Just I'm going to be talking a lot about myself and just kind of just the throes of life and
observational kind of
yeah,
thing,
very observational. Definitely going to throw a little satire in there when I can. And just basically just gonna try and just be your just funny voice in your head for 40 minutes, 1 day a week.
So what's your small town? What small town are you from?
So I am actually from Pasico. Pasico is about an hour 15 north of here in Utica. It's in
the lake. I was thinking Pasico Lake.
Yeah, yeah, literally that's the spot.
It must be kind of nice to grow up on Pasico Lake, I would think.
It's nice to look at.
Small, but not much to do. But you got the lake.
Yeah, not much to do. Not many people around there. I mean, my graduating class was 15 kids. So
wow, 15! Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, it's technically just frontier living up there.
So you probably had like one ELA teacher, one English teacher, probably did all the classes, right?
So honestly, I mean,
I was thinking how would that work?
So basically, it's just you hit a certain grade point, and then they kind of just shuffle the kids up into the bigger districts and consolidate.
Oh,
I was in Pasico for a little while. You can only imagine. I mean, if I had 15 kids in my graduating class, I mean, you start there, and then you pull them all together in a middle school, and then you pull them all together. It's like my high school one way was like 45 minutes.
What was your
Wells?
Was it Adirondack? Or
no, it was Wells Central School in the town of Wells. Yeah, no, to get to Adirondack, which is up in like Boonville, Old Fort.
So they would have been in another direction.
A whole other direction.
So
that
wouldn't have worked.
Yeah. I would have been getting up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, like a baker, just to get to school.
Oh, true.
It's.
So how does living in that small town? How does growing up there? Like how does that frame your work, and how does it change how you observe things?
So you definitely take on just a very resourceful, can-do attitude. You're very DIY.
True.
When you're living in the middle of nowhere, especially.
We're country boys. I'm from Westmoreland, so.
Oh, okay.
So I get it.
Yeah, no, it's so it's just a matter of kind of just just being so isolated from what the norms and the customs are.
There you go.
That it's just like once they finally like make their way up into the mountains, it's just like you already kind of just have just some sort of real skepticism about all of it.
Yeah, we like where I live on these like on my road, we got the internet. I think in like 20. We got like the internet through cable.
Yeah.
In like 2012. You know. Yeah.
My.
What is it called? What did we have? Wi-Fi? We have
I think either like
there's Spectrum. Yeah.
I had.
It took forever, like 2012. When I grew up in the 80s, I had no MTV because we had no cable where I lived in Westmoreland. No cable.
Oh yeah, no.
I wanted my MTV. I didn't get it.
I mean, maybe like 6 channels. Growing up, they never really came in all that well. Like I think I remember.
I couldn't even watch Sesame Street, or it was all like staticky. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it was just I was on dial-up internet till my junior year of high school.
Oh, painful.
That was, I mean, socially crushing.
I'll bet.
Because it's like there's just nothing you just love more than just.
You're like a caveman, and they're all like the Jetsons.
Yeah, you know exactly. You got to argue with your father, you know, to jump on the internet.
It would be on the phone.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Right.
It's back in the day. Yeah, he'd just
my
be like.
My mother would get so mad. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, it'd be nothing but wars, and
she'd be like, "What is that?" Pick up the phone and call.
I couldn't tell you the amount of just grief I would catch from my father the next day coming home from school. You got to get off the internet. Your grandfather tried calling for 4 hours. I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess if it was really important, the county sheriff would have finally showed up. But I mean, sorry. You know,
it all took forever back then. You know, everything you wanted to download. It was like so slow back then. You know.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm part of the generation that was just all like LimeWire and Kazam and all that stuff. So yeah, the amount. Yeah, so we were going.
You're a slightly younger generation than me.
Yeah, a little bit, and it's so the amount of computers my parents went through because of just viruses through the back door.
Right. Yeah, because we had no resistance to viruses back then. It's whenever someone is send us like, oh yeah, go with that.
Exactly. It's just like, attach it next to just a U2 or Metallica album, and
just open this cool thing, and then before you know it, your computer's taken over.
Yeah.
Everyone you know has a virus too.
Yeah. You take it to Circuit City, and they just look at you, just shaking your head, just going, "Oh my goodness."
We can't save this patient.
Yeah.
So comedy. So you were in a show with comedian Jay Watch.
Yes.
And I want to be in one of his shows. We're trying to figure out like what talent I could possibly have to be in a show. But you are a comedian.
Yes.
How does that work? And how did you get involved in comedy?
So comedy was it was basically my escapism growing up. My parents owned a restaurant growing up as a kid. So spent a bunch of time there. So all of my downtime was just listening to comedy albums.
By who?
So early on, it was just. Very early on was Carlin, young Bill Burr, and then it was like when the Blue Collar Comedy Tour was hot, I was buying all their albums. Obviously Jeff Foxworthy, Ron White, who's still one of my favorites to this day, Larry the Cable Guy. And then as I got older, I kind of found my own voice. You know, loved Patrice O'Neill, Bill Burr. I mean, just truly the list goes on, and it's just my taste has just always just evolved as I've gotten older. But it's just, I mean, the amount of, I can tell you I've probably listened to just thousands of hours of just comedy. I mean, it's just, when my parents would close the bar late at night and, you know, they'd be working there, and I'd just be home watching my brother and sister, and that would be on, is Comedy Central or HBO, and I would just be watching these half hours and just getting indoctrinated, as my father would say. But it was just...
that was kind of like me with interviews, and I still do. I still watch interviews, like Barbara Walter stuff, and like stuff from Peter Jennings and like old 70s and stuff. What do you get from doing that? I know, like, when I watch them, like, what I get is kind of like how to frame a question, how to think about stuff in new ways. What do you get when you watch videos of people doing the kind of work that they like you do?
So, we must have two completely different ideas of how we feel about ourselves, because it's like I see somebody who's killing, or just seeing something that I just totally blowing my mind.
Yeah.
And I immediately just go, I'm just like, I mean, I might as well just throw everything I'm writing away and start
you can't do
over.
that.
And it's
No,
don't
don't
but
think
see,
like
comics
that.
are a little different though, because it's just like you almost need that cynicism and edge to kind of just to push you into where it is you're gonna be.
Oh, well,
because
that works. And
yeah.
that.
It's not like I'm giving
Whatever
up.
pushes you up.
Yeah,
you go with it.
we're very competitive. Comics
Yeah.
are very competitive. So when you're seeing somebody doing something at such a high level that you respect,
Yeah.
you're just like, how do I get there?
Yeah.
How do I get there? It's just like his thought process, even just
Mm-hmm.
some like the premises. You'll hear a premise, and you'll just be like, I had an idea, kind of like that. Why didn't I stick with it? Because it would have been great.
How are you going to get there? Like, how did you take those first steps? Because you're on the path. You know, you're doing the thing. How did you start to do this thing?
It's so I signed up for a comedy workshop at the Syracuse Funny Bone in like 2015, 2016.
What did you learn in the workshop?
I had a lot of work to do, and I wasn't going to be on Conan in like a year. That was basically it. It was I did learn. It's just.
But that's a good thing to learn. I mean, I think that's the first thing is to learn. Like, you know what? It's a lot of hard work, but I'm going to do the work.
It's 10,000 hours.
Exactly.
Anything we do here,
10,000
whether it's
hours, yeah.
right,
Like Welcome
right.
Lateral.
Absolutely,
Yep,
yeah.
right.
You
right.
got
Yep.
no one gets around that, and,
No one gets around
so
that, no.
it's just kind of just being comfortable enough and just accepting the fact that you're gonna fail more often
Right,
than not,
right.
and it's as long as you
Yep.
just keep showing up, like it's
Yep.
just by the process you'll get better at
Yep.
it. And that's kind of more or less what I learned then. It was just if you're gonna do this, it can't be 1 foot on, 1 foot off. It's not going to be at your leisure. You have to go all in, and you have to want it. Like
Totally.
it's
Yeah.
and there's no circumventing the work that you have to do to get good.
What was that work that you did? What is the work that you are doing now?
Open mics.
So what is it? What is involved in you going to an open mic? Do you like plan some jokes in advance? How do you like figure what jokes would fit? How do you write a joke? How do you test a joke?
So it's everybody's different. I mean, it's just I know people who are just very very organized with their writing. Will literally write out a bit word for word.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the person. I just write a couple of buzzwords that connect, and it kind of just more or less I just have it in my head. There's some jokes where I've had like certain punchlines and tags written out, but in terms of doing open mics. You treat an open mic like your gym. You're gonna get out what you put into it, and it's so if you're just looking to just do some
So do
maintenance.
you mean like you approach it from like the experience of doing an open mic is something that you're gonna like learn from as well as like perform?
Yeah, no,
Like when you go to the gym,
it-
you work out, like you build.
yeah, because
so,
comedy isn't. You can't do comedy in your home by yourself in front of a mirror.
True,
Like it's
right.
not. You can't. It's not like music. It's not like other forms of writing where you can wall yourself off and you can work at whatever it is that you are.
Right.
Comedy is only done. You only get better at it doing it in front of strangers.
Yeah.
At 5 to 7 minute increments.
Right.
So it's just a matter of just going in there and just being like, okay, I've got this great idea for a joke, about smoking and my dad, and it's and
So would you build your other jokes from that in order to make like maybe like a story or to have a theme?
Yeah.
Would that be a set? There would be a set, right?
Yeah.
Your-
So there's been times where I'll go in and I'll be like, all right, I've got these 3 one-liners that I
Yeah.
want to test out, but they're about this bigger idea or premise.
Yeah.
So so you go up, you tell your joke, and even then you're just kind of just riffing on a little bit as to as things that you've thought about that are cohesive to that topic.
Yeah.
And kind of just more or less going from there. There's jokes that I've been doing, for a couple of years now, where it's just I'll throw it on the shelf or I'll just throw it in the back burner mentally, because whatever reason I just didn't like it or it's just boring to me, and then I'll go out and then just on a random night and just be like, you want to know what? I haven't done this joke in a while, and just by doing that, and just kind of just bringing it back out for the first time, the tags and just the different things you can find in it are just limitless.
Is it hard to keep your jokes fresh for you delivering the
Yes.
joke? Because the audience, you're hearing it for the first time, but you have to deliver it as if you just thought of it in the moment, I imagine.
Yeah, there is. It's definitely it's entertainment. So obviously,
Yeah,
there's got to be a little.
You're acting.
Yeah,
It's
100%.
acting, comedy.
And there's usually, for me personally, it's about that 2 to 3 year mark where, I get to a point where it's just, I'm so over a bit or a joke or even just a whole 15 minutes where you're just like, okay, I've either got to do something with this or I've got to just walk away from this for 6 months because, I'll find something to do with it.
Yeah. So. Or even I imagine sometimes like you may have jokes that are good or material that's good, but like you just need that 6 months because you've done it so much. And you're just tired of it.
Yeah, and it's sometimes, and I'm speaking just purely for me, I get into, they're almost like safety blankets and binkies sometimes. So it's like exactly. So it's like, if you're going at an open mic and
I bet there are things you will get a laugh with, so you can count on it. Right?
Oh yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is that what the safety blanket? Yeah.
Yeah. And,
you probably gotta have that for like security for yourself, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean in shows you definitely, it's good to have, but for an open mic, sometimes the best thing you can do is just go up there and just, eat crow for 7 minutes straight.
Why is that?
A lot of it is it forces you to readjust your way of thinking, and it kind of puts your feet towards the fire, and you're just like, okay, it's not working. Is it me, or is it, the topic or the audience or whatever? You'd rather get that done and out of the way now in front of like your 4 other friends who signed up and the 3 bar patron regulars
instead of a big crowd.
Yeah, instead of a group of either 60 to 100 or more. It's and plus it kind of just bombing hardens you.
I was gonna say, is it important to fail? It's probably good to bomb.
Bombing in the beginning.
We've all bombed. And like, as a teacher, I've bombed too. It's like I think it's good to like have that like where you try to communicate something that doesn't work. So it's okay. I can figure my way out, and whatever I have, because you have to think on your feet as a comedian. I imagine.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, there have been nights where I've done a joke in an early show. Everyone thought it was the greatest joke they've ever heard, or at least that's what I think anyway. And then the late show, it'll come back to crickets.
Yeah.
And it's just like...
Must be a weird feeling.
I think it's weird. Yeah, it is weird, but then sometimes you just laugh at it because because it works. It's just a matter of just,
who's listening to it.
Yeah, it's like how I imagine like a bag of like new flavor of potato chips. It feels. It comes out. There's 3 people that like it, and then there's one person that's calling corporate, going, "Why did you make me eat?" It's like, what's up with this?
It's going to get those things out of the way, I would imagine. So when we come back from the break, I want to ask you both. So like comedy, humor, and poetry has an emotion. I want to ask you, like, what sort of like primal emotions do you think your work individually, like your work, touches upon in your audience that makes them respond? So as a comedian, as a poem, you're both really doing the same thing. You're communicating and you're making people have a response emotionally. So I want to talk to you about the commonalities of those 2 genres and your experiences of them. I'm talking to William Welch. He's the author of Adding Saffron and the publisher of Doubly Mad, an independent journal of arts and ideas. We're also joined by Rob Fish. He's a comedian who's been doing shows throughout the Northeast for the past 8 years. And his podcast, Small Town Shithead, drops this week. This is 95.5 FM The Heat on a Hot Seat Media Monday. I'm Ron Klopfenstein. I'll have more after the break. Thank you. This is Ron Klopfenstein, and you're in the Hot Seat on a Media Monday. Hey, welcome back, everybody, and happy St. Patrick's Day. We are a group of writers here. My guests are William Welch. He is the author of Adding Saffron. He also publishes Doubly Mad, the journal. I lost my page here. Doubly Mad, the independent journal of arts and ideas in Utica. And I'm with Rob Fish, and Rob Fish is a comedian who has a new podcast. His new podcast is debuts this week. His podcast is called Small Town Shithead. Comes out this week. So here we are. We're writers, comedians, but what we do as artists, I think both of us, all 3 of us, and Jay-Z too, he just left, but he's still here somewhere. We make people feel, and we make people have a response. And I think this is a commonality in what we do. So like, what is it, how can you speak to like, how do you use your work, both either as a performer or as a writer, because you are writing your joke before you perform that.
Right.
What is it you're trying to like touch in people? What is it you're trying to give to your audience?
I honestly, to me, I'm just trying to give them assurance that whatever their vulnerabilities are or whatever they've gone through, like you're not alone, and you can laugh at it. They say that basically, with comedy, we go up there, we're stripped down to nothing but our vulnerability and our insecurity. And we're expected to deliver on that, and I think that's also true with like poems and writing too.
I would say that a big part of what I'm trying to do with my work is sort of, on the one hand, invoke some sense of wonder and awe, and people read my work. That's what I'm going for in myself with my experience as I write it. The other thing is to help build empathy for other people. I mean, those are things that I really feel are core elements of my work. I also would like my poems to be, intellectually stimulating in a way too. Like, curiosity is a huge thing for me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, if you don't have any curiosity, like, I don't know what you do with your time,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, curiosity is a big thing. I mean, it's about observing the world around me, is because I'm curious, fundamentally. And then if you're curious about the world, you're curious about, like, hey, what does Rob do? How does he make that? I mean, everything that you've been talking about has been really interesting to me, because it's similar to what I do in a sense, but you've also got your own experience, and it's really interesting to learn about that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that for me, when I'm writing something, that's what I'm trying to touch on, and get people to maybe break out of their viewpoint a little bit.
Yeah.
And see something about the world they're living in that they didn't recognize was there, because we're swamped 24/7 with things that are trying to take our attention.
Yeah.
And we're not necessarily driving the car with our attention a lot of the times.
Right.
We're bombarded constantly.
Do you think that's what we do as artists? Is we try to get people to stop and look?
Absolutely.
I think so.
Really,
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways, it's okay to laugh at the pain. It's okay to laugh at, particularly in just comedy. It's okay to, it's okay to find the taboo quirky. It's okay to, it's okay that you had an embarrassing moment, because we all have experienced something on that level too. I mean, it's they say that comedy and tragedy. I mean, it's the duality.
Well, that's like it's funny, because I mean there are poems in my book that are about grieving.
Yeah.
Learning how to I work as a registered nurse, and unfortunately you see things that you wish you hadn't seen, and you have to come to terms with that.
Yeah.
And
some of the best art, throughout time, it has come from some of the darkest places. I mean, one of the funniest jokes and one of the funniest comedy specials that I had ever heard was from Doug Stanhope, and his joke is about his mother and the end of her life, and essentially killing his mother was just something that I resonated with so much, because of just I've dealt with a loved one that was the comfort, led to life, comfort, care, and so it's awesome that you can take something as just dark and as painful as that, and once you give it enough time, it can be some of the funniest things you can look back at.
Yeah, and that reminds me of a Tony Hoagland poem. He's oftentimes a very funny poet, and he's passed now, but there's a poem that he wrote about taking care of his mother, and helping her, bathing her, and that's a dark poem. It's not one of his funnier ones, but it's somewhere it's dealing with this experience and taking something from it, and it's sort of Rumpelstiltskin, spinning it to gold. If that's a good story.
How does that help you to deal? I'm sure that helps you to deal with it too, as a comedian, as people. Yeah. Once you were able to take something that was very real to you, and maybe painful or difficult or challenging, and make it into a work of art, a joke, an act, a set, a poem, a comedy. I think it's a super makes you much more stronger than just surviving it, because you survived it, but you did something with it too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it takes just a mental and emotional conditioning for you to kind of just take something that is just so raw and to to try and find a connection with it in other people.
Yeah.
It's
but think about it. Think about like jazz music. Now at the other side we have a jazz series. We just had a performance this Saturday.
At the other side.
At the other side of Utica at 2011 Genesee Street. And now there's a music that came out of all this suffering, and it turned into something remarkable. I mean, and it's been really a wonderful thing to get to know the musicians that come and play in our space, because they could be at this table talking with us.
Yeah,
they're doing the same thing that we're talking about. Converting their own experience, whether it be pain or joy, and sharing it with other people.
Yeah. Sometimes I have these conversations like we're having now, and I think to myself, and I hope the listeners too are like realizing this is like a great conversation that we're having here.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And it's so interesting, and I think like I learned so much from talking to people like you guys, other people who create art and who create ideas and communicate. What do you get from other artists? First of all, like other artists within your field, like what comedians do you learn from? What poets do you learn from? But then in a bigger sense, like what artists in general do you learn from just in life? And think, maybe that's not a comedian, but something about the way she approaches her life or her work, I can learn from. So like, who inspires you guys?
I mean, for me right now, I mean, it's just, I think back to just a lot of the comics that, I'm into right now. Shane Gillis, Dan Soder.
What about them?
It's how comfortable they've become with themselves, and how that has just opened up a just deeper level of comedy.
Yeah.
And seeing them, and kind of just seeing them watch their careers grow over the last, 8-10 years, and listening to their acts then and listening to them now, it's almost kind of like it's shown me the roadmap of just being like, okay, if I really want to be successful in this, and if I really want to have an impact in this field, you have to really kind of accept who you are as a person. Otherwise, you're just always going to be hitting this ceiling, no matter how hard you try.
Because of the inauthenticity?
Yeah, because of the, I think if there's one thing that I can say about comedy for me personally is that, once I got about 5 years into it, all of my insecurities and all of the flaws of me as a person, like, were really just brought out, and it was just like, okay, I have a choice. I can either deal with these things, take whatever lessons I can out of them, make them funny, move on, or I can just, tell everyone around me, well, this is just who I am, now deal with it. And it's so, it kind of just being at that crossroads, making the decision, it's being like, okay, I've really got to change and really open my mind up a little bit, has made me a better comic, has made me the person that just wants to explore, deeper jokes, deeper material. I don't, knock jokes and one-liners are fun, but you want to go up
meaningful.
There. Yeah, you want to go up there and really just really resonate with the people that you're performing in front of.
Yeah, I love that. I bet you have similar feelings like that.
A big part of my writing is my friends that I mentioned, Doran Domenico, but my friend Tom Townsley's a poet, and then Ruth Dandre, who I just was so fortunate I got to produce her book of poems that just came out. These people mean a lot to me. I wouldn't have written without them, because we have this back and forth. It's a community of people, and that inspires me, and you see your poem from a different perspective when somebody else reads it.
Right.
And then, of course, not just my friends, but reading, whatever great poet. Like, I've been reading a lot of Miloš's work lately. And he's an older poet. He's passed away, but you spend time with a great poet's work, and it's like what you're saying. You get challenged. You say, well, okay, what am I going to do with that? How did he write that amazing poem? And it's so on the surface, anyway, it looks very simple, but it's not.
Who is somebody like an artist who like you find particularly like where throughout your life, like where you kind of like use them as kind of like, this is what I aim for. Like for me, I've said this before, Barbara Walters, because she's somebody who was a trailblazer as a female anchor and as a female reporter. She blazed a lot of trails, and also because her work, she showed with her work that she gave equal resonance and significance to things that were important culturally as well as like economically or politically. And I think she was really ahead of her time, and she was brilliant understanding, like, you know, in 1991, Jennifer Aniston was as important as Bill Clinton, you know, at the time. So like for me, she's someone who's like, I see as like, even now, like I still like watch her videos and stuff. And who's someone for you, like, where you think like this person, or maybe more than one, like where they have these qualities where I want to be able to like get that, or I gotta grasp that, or like what they did shows me something I kind of want to do too, or I want to build on.
Well, there are so many different poets that I, in different times in my life, have connected like that with.
Yeah.
So one of them is Miłosz, or Miłosz, I think is actually how it's pronounced in Polish.
And what about his work?
Oh, he just has a certain clarity to his writing that's amazing, and he's not afraid to. He deals with social topics that are important to him. But on the other hand, then I love the work of somebody like Robert Bly, who Doubly Mad is,
That's where the name from the
title
journal
came from,
right?
a poem by Robert Bly.
Yeah.
And Orrin and Kim Domenico started that magazine back in 2004. And a lot of
Doubly Mad is the journal we've been talking
right.
about. It's
Yeah.
local people contribute work. That's
But
lucky.
Robert always talked about how he wants his poems to leap. That means you're reading about a chicken, and all of a sudden you're talking about something transcendent.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're like, how did that happen? How did he take me from a chicken to, how did we get there, man? I don't know how we got there. That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of a good poem. It takes you a place you don't know how you got there, and you don't know how you're going to get back.
Right.
So there are so many great poets.
Yeah, for me personally, it was Bill Burr. Bill Burr's career has I've always kept a close eye on, just because he was just in on a lot of things that I was watching. Everything from Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn, Opie and Anthony, just whatever.
Yeah.
He early on in his career found a lot of success. Got a couple of pilot deals, and they didn't work out. They got canceled. Is what it is. To see someone like him just go through the industry, learn as much as he did, failed, accepted that he failed, accepted that there were things about him that he needed to let go and adjust and move on to become the comic that he wanted to be. It's like that's something that really has resonated with me, and particularly right now in terms of just
Why?
A lot of it because I'm at that crossroads now
right.
of just do I make these changes so that I can be the person that I want to be the comic that I want to be, or do I just start all the arguments at the family get-togethers?
Right. True. So let me ask you both before we go. Like, what's your best pitch to people out there to find their own voice and to like try expressing themselves in their own way? And there's different ways. Like, I always want to be in a community J-Watch. Somebody do want to host a show or something, but we all do our own thing. I don't sing, I don't dance, but I like to host, I can write, You found poetry, you found comedy. You probably, we probably all in some ways do the same thing. I'm sure some ways I express myself in brief bits of words, poetically.
You punch the steering wheel a lot, heading home from bad gigs. Like, okay.
Exactly. Right, so we all got our rhythm there, So, actually, I've lost my question here. Whatever that question was, I know it was a good one, but I had too much of a setup.
No, I think I got it. In regards to just people wanting to be creative.
Yes. Give me your best pitch to get out there and make some media.
I mean, it's just, I hate to sound cliche, but you just do it. You just go out there, you throw it all against.
Does it feel good when you do it? At times.
It does. You have to learn how to manage that feeling because you don't know what it is the first time I got off stage and had a somewhat decent set and people were laughing, I firmly believe that there is nothing that will replace that adrenaline rush in the first couple of minutes of coming off stage.
You're probably a bit disoriented too.
Yeah, and honestly,
the ecstasy of that applause was been amazing.
It'll carry you. Honestly, I mean, it's gotten me through the last couple of years. So it's there's just nothing better.
It's really nice to feel the public support. Like I don't have this support in terms of like an audience and like there with me, but I know the feeling of like having this, and it's a nice feeling, isn't it? It kind of like sustains you a bit.
Just being seen, honestly, just having anyone, just the reaction.
Right.
I've done it long enough now where I understand that it's not just all about laughters and claps, and sometimes a long pause or a groan or just a tepid response. It's done its job. The joke has done its purpose. So it's just like
because it made him think.
Exactly.
Right? Feel.
It just made him. They had a response.
Yeah.
That's all that mattered.
And that groan or that silence, that is them communicating magic is happening because people are doing stuff. How about you?
Yeah, well, I think everybody has some kind of creative impulse, and I think that it's important for people to trust that intuition or instinct, because when you do that, you're creating something of your own. You're not taking you're not taking marching orders from our culture and just doing whatever. Right. You are creating your own world. You have that impulse in you, and I think that it can be so freeing, and it does make you vulnerable, right? Because obviously you're going to be rejected at times, and people are not going to get the joke or they're not going to like the poem, but there are times where
makes you strong.
It doesn't matter, because what matters is that you've created that space and it's yours, and you can share it with other people, and people will want to share it.
Right. Well, thank you guys. So, Rob Fish, you have shows coming out. I'm going to have all the information about how to buy Adding Saffron. The journal, the new journal, Doubly Mad, will be released in April.
So we've got 2 events coming up. On April 3rd, I have a reading at the other side of Utica. That's my book, my release reading for my book. And then on April 22nd, which is a Saturday, at 2 p.m., we have a release reading for the new issue of Doubly Mad.
So your book, has it been released or is it being released?
My book is out now, and you can get it it is available on Amazon. You can go to my publisher's website too, finishinglinepress.com, I think it is. And you can get it there, or you could come to my reading on April 3rd at 7 p.m. at the other side.
And I'll have links to all that stuff in the show notes. Rob, what's up for you next?
So, obviously you can always check me out every other Tuesday at Chris's Grub and Pub in Rome. They do a local open mic there, comedy open mic.
And, cool.
Yeah, and it's always a really good turnout. I'm always working on new jokes and material there. I'll be basically just more or less in the southern tier starting in April.
Nice.
I'll be doing some shows with Homebrewed Comedy. Definitely check them out on social media, and then I got a couple of Don't Tell comedies coming up in the area this spring.
I'll have links to all your stuff, your socials in the show notes too. They're all up on Wednesday at uticaphoenix.net/Media Monday. My guests today were writer and publisher William Welch and comedian and podcaster Rob Fish. That's the other thing, Rob. We're going to have links to your podcast, there
coming
too.
Up this week.
So, and we'll have links to this podcast too. I'll have the video, podcast, and show notes online Wednesday at uticaphoenix.net/Media Monday. Our sound engineer is Jonathan Brooks, DJ J Easy. He's up next with the Easy Ride Home. And Jim Hale records the show for YouTube and podcasts. Nabil Khan is our entertainment correspondent. Look for this show Wednesday at uticaphoenix.net/Media Monday. I'm Ron Klofferstein, and this has been The Hot Seat on a Media Monday.